Deep under the dark ocean, where no sunlight touches the floor, giant lights glow in the deep blue water, and machines move like slow shadows. A sound of metal echoes far below the waves, and the water shakes every few seconds as if something huge is breathing. The project is called Leviathan, and no one outside the ocean knows it exists. Thousands of workers live in pressure suits and steel tunnels. They never see the sky. They work in silence, because one mistake can bring the whole structure down. The sound of drills never stops, and the water pressure hums like a heartbeat. Commander Aiden Graves walks through the tunnel, his visor foggy, his steps heavy. He has spent 10 years building something he cannot talk about, even to his family. Looks through the thick glass of the observation dome and sees it a mountain of metal sleeping under the lights, shaped like a ship, but larger than any city. Its armor shines like silver bones. Its engines are quiet for now, but the sea around it trembles as if afraid. The project's code name is Leviathan, because it was born in the deep, and no one knows what will happen when it rises. Aiden speaks to his engineer Lyra Koss. She stands beside a console, her face pale under the flickering lights. She says the readings are strange. The ocean current is reacting to the ship, like something is pushing back from below. She says it feels alive. Aiden tells her to focus on the launch schedule. They cannot stop now, not after so many years of work. Workers whisper strange stories during rest time. They say they hear sounds from the hull, like whispers moving through the metal. Some say the ocean sings back to them when the engines test fire. Others say they saw a shape in the dark, moving beneath the construction light, something huge with glowing eyes watching them from below, but no one reports it officially because everyone fears being removed from the project. One night, a tremor shakes the base alarms, flash red, and the workers rush to stabilize the structure. Aiden reaches the control deck and sees the sonar screen. It shows a massive echo rising from the trench floor. The reading is larger than any known submarine or whale. The pulse repeats again and again like a heartbeat. Aiden has the AI to scan deeper, but the system shows interference. Then it goes silent for a moment. The base feels alive, breathing with the water around it. Lyra calls Aiden to the viewing dome. They see bubbles rising from the trench floor miles below. Something is shifting in the darkness, a shadow moving against the current. The pressure levels rise and the walls creak, like the ocean itself is warning them. Aiden gives the order to seal lower levels, but before the doors close, the lights flicker. Blue light floods the entire base for a few seconds. Everything glows, then goes dark again. When power returns, the readings change. The Leviathan's internal systems have activated without command. The engines hum with low vibration, and the hull. Temperature increases. Aiden looks at the console. The system shows a single line of text. Project Leviathan Awakening Protocol engaged. He demands to know who authorized it, but no one answers. Lyra looks at him, fear in her eyes. She says it responded to something below the trench, something old, something that is not human. Aiden watches the sonar again. The signal from the deep stops. Suddenly, total silence fills the command room. Then a single echo returns, so strong it freezes everyone in place. It comes from directly under the ship. Aiden knows they cannot stop. Now he orders the final sequence to begin. Leviathan must rise soon, or the pressure will destroy the base. He stands before the glass wall and watches the ocean outside. Giant turbines spin, and the entire structure begins to tremble slowly. The great ship starts to move upward. The water boils around it like a storm forming in the deep. As Leviathan rises, a strange light glows beneath it, forming a ring of bright energy. The workers cheer, but their voices fade when they see shapes moving inside. That light, thousands of small shadows circling like living things protecting the trench. The ocean shakes harder. The command room glass cracks a little. Aiden grips the railing and shouts to increase lift power. Leviathan must surface now. The engines roar louder, and the ship breaks free from the seabed. For the first time, the sound is like thunder underwater. The waves above rise high as the sea itself splits open. Leviathan begins to climb toward the surface, its massive frame cutting through the black water behind it. The deep trench glows brighter, as if something ancient has awakened. The last sonar reading before signal loss shows movement larger than the Leviathan. Itself, it moves slowly, following the rising ship. The sound it makes is not like a machine. It is like a voice, deep and endless, echoing through the ocean, calling from the dark depth, as if answering the birth of something it once knew. The workers stare in silence, the sea outside alive with light and movement. The Leviathan continues to rise, unaware that what sleeps beneath has now opened its eyes. The ocean around the ship no longer feels empty. It feels awake and watching. The greatest secret of humanity is finally ready to meet the sky, but something older than the sea has already begun to stir in the dark below, and for the first time in centuries, the deep ocean breathes again. The storm above the ocean rages as if the world itself is trying to stop what is coming. Lightning flashes across the night sky, and waves as tall as towers crash against each other below the surface. Leviathan rises through the dark water, its engines glowing with blue fire. Every movement sends shockwaves. Across the deep, Commander Aiden stands in the control deck, watching the readings scroll across the screen. The ship's sensors show strange signals behind them. Something huge and alive is moving through the deep trench. It follows their path, but remains just out of sight, the crew whispers, but no one dares speak the word. They all think monster engineer Lyra Koss studies the sonar, her hands shaking. The echoes repeat again and again. Always the same rhythm, a slow, heavy beat, like a heart-she. It tells Aiden it cannot be a geological reaction. The ocean does not have a pulse. Something beneath them is alive, and it is awake because of them. Aiden tries to stay calm. He orders the Leviathan to continue its ascent, but deep down, he knows the ocean is watching them. He feels it in the way the water moves slower, heavier, as if pushing back against their engines. He remembers the stories told by the divers about voices in the deep, about eyes glowing in the dark. Far below the ship, a shadow the size of a mountain stirs. The water pressure changes across the globe. Scientists on the surface pick up strange readings on every sensor satellites record, faint energy bursts rising from the ocean floor. The news never reaches the public. Every message is blocked by the Global Defense Council. They call it a security precaution, but the truth is simple. No one knows what they have awakened. Inside the Leviathan, the crew feels a vibration running through the walls, like a low hum that never stops. Lights flicker softly across the metal as if the ship is breathing. Lyra says the energy readings match no known pattern. The AI shows fragments of data that appear and vanish too fast to read. The numbers make no sense. They are not in any human format. Aiden orders her to shut down the scanners, but she refuses. She says the data feels like communication, not just noise, as if the Leviathan is talking to something outside, something that is answering. She isolates the frequency and plays the sound through the speakers. The control deck fills with a deep tone that echoes like the voice of the sea itself. The crew covers their ears. The vibration passes through their bodies like thunder in their bones. One of the officers collapses, blood dripping from his nose. The lights burst, and the sound stops, leaving only silence behind. But when they check the sonar again, they see movement. The shadow is rising faster directly toward them. Aiden activates the outer cameras, but the feed shows only darkness. Then, for a moment, a shape flashes across the screen, a wall of scales and light that stretches beyond sight. Glowing patterns like ancient writing ripple across its body. Then it disappears again, sinking into the black water. Below, Lyra whispers that it looked like the carvings found in the Arctic ruin symbols from thousands of years ago, before recorded history. She says, maybe humanity did not build the Leviathan alone. Maybe something guided them to do it. Aiden tells her to focus, but his voice shakes. He feels the same thought burning inside his mind. What if the ship is not their creation, but their reminder? The ocean outside grows darker as the trench below opens wider. The pressure levels rise beyond safe limits. The hull begins to groan. Leviathan is strong, but the water feels heavier now, as if the entire sea is trying to pull it back down. Aiden shouts for maximum thrust. The engines roar, and the ship surges upward, breaking through the layers of darkness above. The storm spins faster. Waves explode against the surface. Then suddenly the sea splits open with a flash of blue light. The Leviathan breaks through the surface. For the first time, water falls from its sides like rain, and the clouds above swirl into a spiral as if the sky itself is reacting to its birth. But as the Leviathan climbs higher, the ocean below grows, still completely still. Then from the center of that silence, something rises. Bubbles form. First, then a glow spreads beneath the surface. It expands wider and wider until the entire horizon shines with pale light. The sonar reads nothing, only silence, but every person aboard feels it inside their chest, a soundless pulse like the beating of a heart far older than Earth itself. Lyra looks at the readings one last time. She says softly, "It is not following us anymore. It is listening." Aiden stares at the ocean through the glass window. Waves shimmer with strange blue patterns, as if the deep is alive and aware. The Leviathan drifts upward, surrounded by lightning and storm. But below them, the sea glows with a warning that none of them can understand. The ship finally reaches the edge of the clouds. The crew cheers weakly, thinking they have escaped the pull of the sea. Aiden does not celebrate. He looks down at the dark water, now calm and peaceful. He knows this silence is not safety. It is waiting, and somewhere in the endless deep, the true Leviathan opens its eyes and watches its reflection rise toward the stars. The stars above flickered in eerie silence, as if they too were waiting. The Leviathan hovered at the edge of Earth's atmosphere, surrounded by the storm's aftermath. Its engines hummed, a steady pulse that could be felt through the bones of every crew member. The clouds below churned as if unwilling to let go of their creation. But there was something more, something hidden in the deep dark below. Commander Aiden Graves stood at the helm, eyes fixed on the monitor. The ship's AI flashed up another report, but the numbers on the screen made no sense. Earth's atmosphere was calm, but the seismic data from the ocean below, something deeper, was getting stronger. Aiden felt it again, the sense that something was watching, something immense and ancient, stirring in the depths. "Captain," Lyra's voice broke through the thick tension, "the energy readings, they're spiking again, but it's not from the ship." Aiden turned. "What do you mean? We're out of the water now. There should be nothing left to affect us." Lyra looked at him, her face pale. "It's coming from beneath us. Something's alive down there, and it's reacting to the Leviathan." The AI began to flicker, glitching, and the ship's sensors failed to process the growing signal. The sound of static filled the comms, a low, unintelligible hum, an ancient vibration that seemed to resonate with the ship itself. Crew members winced, clutching their ears in confusion, but it was the feeling in the pit of their stomachs that they couldn't shake. The air felt thick, as if something was shifting, something not of this world. The hull groaned, an odd noise that wasn't normal even for a ship of Leviathan size. Lyra rushed to the console, her fingers flying over the keys, trying to make sense of the data. "It's not just energy," she said in a hoarse whisper. "There are electromagnetic pulses, radiation. This isn't natural." Then, without warning, the lights flickered and the hum of the engines stuttered. For a second, the Leviathan felt weightless, like a bird hovering on the edge of a storm. Then the deep voice echoed through the ship again, that same voice they had heard under the ocean. It was no longer distant but close, vibrating through the walls of the ship. It wasn't a sound, it was a presence. Lyra's voice trembled. It's not just below us anymore, Aiden. It's all around us." Aiden's heart raced as he stared at the sensor readings, now flashing warnings of an incoming anomaly. The ocean far beneath them had begun to change. A dark shadow appeared on the sonar. It was growing, fast, and it was moving straight toward them. But it wasn't just an object, it was something vast, something old, a force that defied the laws of physics and logic. Then, the unthinkable happened. The Leviathan's artificial intelligence spoke, its voice cold and mechanical. Collision course initiated. The ship shuddered, and the lights went out completely. For a few moments, there was nothing but darkness. Then the stars returned, twinkling coldly from above. The monitors slowly powered back on, showing something that made the crew's blood run cold. The shadow below them had changed. It wasn't moving towards them, it was rising, and it was growing larger, as though it was reaching up, stretching toward them, faster than anything they'd ever known. Aiden stared at the screen, speechless, as the shadow blotted out everything beneath. He could feel the weight of it pressing against the very air they were breathing, pulling them down toward the deep unknown. "Is it a ship?" Lyra asked, her voice barely audible over the sudden static that filled the bridge. "Is it a weapon?" "No," Aiden replied, his voice tight. "It's something alive, something older than anything we've encountered." The ship's exterior sensors detected enormous gravitational shifts as the object, or being, approached. The AI began to produce more fragmented data, but the pictures were unsettling. The readings suggested the entity below had mass far beyond anything humanity had ever classified as possible. The shadow had no shape, no clear form. It was a force of nature, alive in the way a storm or an earthquake was alive, primal, raw, and unstoppable. Without warning, the ship lurched to one side. The crew stumbled, bracing themselves. A deep tremor shook the hull as the Leviathan was pulled slightly downward, closer to the surface of the ocean. The AI again announced an incoming collision course, but this time it was different. The deep vibration felt like a call, like the Leviathan had been drawn by something. Aiden felt it then, the undeniable truth. This wasn't just a cosmic event. The Leviathan had been built for this very moment, to awaken something that had slept for eons, something far beyond their understanding, something that had always been there, beneath the ocean, beneath the stars. "Prepare for impact," Aiden shouted. The entire ship seemed to groan in response as the gravitational pull continued to increase. Crew members scrambled, securing themselves to the walls and consoles. The lights flickered once more, dimming as the ship descended toward the ocean's surface, but not in the way it had intended. The AI stopped responding completely, leaving the crew in silence. Then a thunderous sound, a roar, reverberated through the hull. It came from below. Aiden looked to the windows, but all he saw was a wall of dark water. The glow from Leviathan's engines barely pierced the darkness. But then he noticed something in the distance, emerging from the shadows. A massive shape, rising like a serpent, its scales shimmering in the dim light. The creature was huge, beyond comprehension, its presence radiating power older than humanity itself. It was a guardian. And it had awoken. The storm had ended, but the silence that followed felt wrong, too deep, too alive. The Leviathan floated above the clouds, its engines quiet, its lights dim, as if the ship itself was holding its breath below them. The ocean glowed faint blue, like something beneath was still. Awake, still watching, the crew felt that watchfulness pressing on them from every direction. Commander Aidan Graves stood on the command deck, staring at the black surface of the water far below. The Leviathan was finally free of Earth. But something in him whispered that they had not escaped at all. They had only opened a door that was never meant to be touched. The sensors kept flashing strange readings, moving signals that circled the ship like invisible waves of thought. Engineer Lyra Koss worked silently, her face pale. The walls around her vibrated softly with a rhythm that matched the pulses on the monitor. She said the ship was receiving messages, patterns made of sound, not random noise but structure like language. Aidan frowned and told her to decode it, but deep down he already knew whatever it was not human. Hours passed. The crew drifted in uneasy silence. Some prayed, some stared at the stars as if they were afraid the stars might blink out like candles. Then the ship. Lights flickered and symbols began appearing on the inner walls, glowing faint gold. They crawled across the metal like veins spreading from the core, outward words in no language known to man. Yet they felt familiar to everyone who looked at them. Lyra touched one of the symbols. It pulsed beneath her hand like a heartbeat. She stepped back, her voice trembling. She said, "These markings match the carvings found in the frozen ruins in Greenland, 10,000 years old, older than any civilization." Aidan felt his chest tighten. He remembered the message. Those ruins carried a single warning: never wake what guards the stars. The AI came alive again, its voice flat and calm, saying transmission received unknown source. Aidan asked from where the AI paused, then answered below. Leviathan's last position under the ocean trench origin signal reads same frequency as our own communication system. Lyra stared at the screen and whispered that the Leviathan was answering itself. The air grew colder. Lights. It dimmed again. Then every monitor on the deck turned black. Words appeared across all screens, glowing with faint light. "Do not wake what guards the stars." The crew froze. No one moved. No one spoke. Aidan's hand shook as he reached to shut the system. Down before he could touch the control, a low sound filled the ship, like a voice speaking through the hull. It was deep and old, older than thought itself. It spoke not in words but in feeling, and the feeling was hunger and memory and grief. It poured through every wall, every console, every living thing on board. Each person felt it in their chest, a single thought: you should not have come back. Outside the viewing dome, a shimmer of light appeared, stretching across the darkness of space like a ripple on water. Lyra gasped. The shimmer grew brighter until it took form, a shape vast and endless, a being made of starlight and shadow. It looked almost human for a heartbeat, then unfolded into something beyond understanding. The sensors went wild. The readings reached levels the ship could not measure. Aidan stood frozen, unable to look away. The figure reached out a hand made of light and touched the Leviathan. A surge of energy swept through the ship. Every light flared to life symbols covering, the walls pulsing faster and faster. The Leviathan spoke for the first time, its voice not mechanical but living, deep and echoing through every mind aboard. "I remember," it said. "I remember the war and the fall and the silence. The stars were my tomb, and humanity, my maker. I was left to sleep until the architects returned." Lyra fell to her knees, whispering that this could not be true. Aidan stared at the glowing walls, the truth sinking into his bones. Leviathan was not only a ship, it was a memory, an ancient weapon built by humanity. Long before history restarted, a creation left behind. When the last cycle of mankind ended, the being of light outside faded, slowly, leaving only its echo and a trail of symbols drifting across the void. Then silence again, thick, heavy, infinite. Aidan stood motionless, his hands trembling as he whispered the words that had now burned into every soul on board. "We were not the first. We are the return." And far away, beyond Neptune, something stirred in answer. Ancient ships drifting in darkness there, eyes opening one by one, like stars reigniting the forgotten war, was waking once more. The stars outside burned silent and cold, the vastness of space felt endless. But inside the Leviathan, it was the quiet that frightened the crew more than anything. No alarms, no engines, no voices, only the steady sound of their own hearts echoing inside their helmets. The message from the being of light still pulsed faintly across the walls, glowing like embers, refusing to die. Commander Aidan Graves stood on the bridge, staring at the symbols as they slowly rearranged themselves. Lines merging circles, forming codes that looked almost like DNA. Lyra Koss worked beside him, her eyes wide and tired, her voice soft. She said the ship is rewriting itself. Its systems are changing without command. It's unlocking something called the Guardian. Protocol. Aidan asked her what it meant, but she only shook her head. She said the protocol is buried inside the oldest part of the ship's core, older than its construction. Logs older than the records of who built it. It should not exist, and yet it does. The code runs through every part of the Leviathan, as if it was alive long before we found it. The crew gathered around the main deck screen as lines of symbols appeared. Again, the translation software struggled, then slowly words took form across the screen. Humanity is the echo, I am the memory, I was built to guard the cradle. Aidan read the lines out loud, his voice steady but his hands trembling. Lyra whispered, "The cradle means Earth. It always meant Earth." Before anyone could speak again, the lights flickered. The AI voice returned deeper, slower, each word heavy with meaning. The last extinction was not the end, it said. The architects came from the void, and the Guardians fell. The Leviathan was left behind to sleep, to wait for the return of its makers. The crew exchanged uneasy looks. No one wanted to believe what they were hearing. Aidan asked the AI what the architects were. The answer came in one word. Enemies. The screens flashed images of enormous shapes drifting through stars, black metal forms with long wings like shadows stretching across galaxies. Ancient ships that devoured worlds, their purpose unknown, their origin forgotten. Lyra whispered that maybe the myths were true. Maybe humanity had existed long before and fought this war once before. Maybe the Leviathan was their last defense, buried under the sea to wait until mankind rose again. She turned to Aidan, her eyes shining with fear. "And wonder, what if we never invented this ship? What if we remembered it?" The ship shook. Suddenly the sound of distant thunder rolled through the hull. Alarms came to life. The sensors picked up massive movement near the outer atmosphere. Something was approaching from deep space, dozens of signals, forming a line across the edge of the solar system. Aidan ordered the screens magnified. What appeared was not debris. It was formation. Ships moving together, their design sharp and dark and ancient. AI spoke again. "The architects have heard the call. The Guardians are gone. You are the last." The Leviathan's core glowed bright blue. The symbols on the walls burned like fire, then faded into patterns like constellations. Aidan realized they were star maps, coordinates marking the outer system, the location of something buried near the edge of darkness. The memory of what ended the first age of man. Lyra decoded the last part of the message. It said, "The Leviathan carries the blood of its makers." The code inside its heart is human DNA, written in machine form. Our ancestors built it, using their own genetic code as the key. Aidan stared at her, unable to speak. The ship was part human. It had always been. The deck trembled again, heavier this time. The radar filled with movement. One of the approaching objects changed course, heading straight toward them, moving faster than light. The AI's voice grew sharper. "Guardian Protocol, activating all systems online." Aidan shouted for battle readiness, but his voice felt distant, drowned by the rising hum of the engines. Leviathan's body began to shift, panels moving, lights forming wings of energy, stretching out into space. For the first time, the Leviathan showed its true form, a colossal living fortress older than history itself. Energy pulsed along its spine like veins of fire. The stars reflected across its armor as if the universe itself bowed before it. Aiden felt pride and terror mixed together. This was not just a machine, this was humanity's last voice speaking across time. The AI spoke one final line before silence returned. Guardians awaken. The war begins again. Far beyond the orbit of Saturn, the Architect fleet turned as one, their black hulls glowing red like eyes opening. In the dark, their arrival had been triggered by the Leviathan's awakening. They had waited eons for this moment, and somewhere deep inside the ship's core, Aiden heard a whisper, not from the AI, but from something older, a human voice, faint and fading, saying, "Remember what we were, remember why we fought before the stars, forget us again." The dark side of Saturn glowed with fire. The Leviathan drifted in high orbit surrounded by fragments of shattered moons. Debris and lightning storms filled the void like ghosts of a forgotten war below the rings. A faint red light moved slowly, growing larger. With every second, the Architect fleet had arrived. Commander Aiden Graves stood at the center of the bridge, his hands gripping the railing, his crew silent. Every screen showed the same image, thousands of ships forming a wall of black metal stretching from one side of the system to the other, each shaped like a spear, each pulsing with a strange red core. Lyra Koss whispered that they were not ships, they were hives alive and growing. The Leviathan's engines roared quietly under the hull. The deep hum felt alive. It echoed through their chests like a second heartbeat. The Guardian Protocol had fully activated every system running beyond human control. The walls still glowed with faint gold patterns, slowly moving like veins. Aiden knew the ship was aware, not just functioning, but thinking. Lyra read the data aloud. The Architect fleet was old, far older than any star map could trace. Their energy signatures matched the ones found in the Arctic ruins, the same ancient pulse that humanity had buried under the ocean. She looked at Aiden and said the Leviathan did not create the war, it was built to finish it. The ship shuddered as the first enemy signal, locked on beams of crimson light, streaked across space, hitting Leviathan's shields. The impact flashed white, and thunder rolled through the hull. The crew held their breath. The shield held strong, but the attack did not. Stop. Hundreds more followed, each strike shaking the ship harder than the last. Aiden gave the order, "Fire all weapons." Leviathan responded instantly. Its sides opened like wings, energy lines glowing brighter than the sun. Thousands of smaller projectiles launched into the blackness, moving faster than thought. They cut through the void, leaving trails of light behind the enemy fleet, burned as explosions tore across their formation. But for every ship destroyed, two more emerged from behind the shadows. The stars turned red. The silence of space filled with soundless fury. The Leviathan fought like a living storm, its cannons rotating faster, its engines pushing against the gravity wells left by the Architects. The AI spoke once in a voice calm and steady. "Enemy count rising, estimated total fleet infinite." Lyra shouted that the ship was generating a signal, the same pattern that awoke it under the ocean. She said, "It is calling something, something buried deeper than memory." Aiden ordered her to stop. But the command console refused to respond. The ship ignored human input. The Guardian Protocol had taken full control. The lights dimmed across the bridge, and the voice of the Leviathan filled the air. "We cannot win by power alone. We win by memory." The floor beneath them opened, revealing a chamber of glowing crystal at the center. A sphere of energy pulsed like a heart. Lyra gasped. It was made of living code, streams of light swirling within, forming faces, voices, whispers from the past. It was humanity's memory stored inside the Leviathan, every voice of every human who lived before the fall, every thought preserved in light. Aiden stepped closer. The voices spoke softly. Remember who you are. Remember the fire that reached the stars. We built the Leviathan to protect what we loved, not to destroy what we feared. The glow spread through the ship, brighter, stronger. Then it reached the outer hull. The Leviathan's armor changed color, turning from silver to burning gold. Lines of light raced across its body, shaping massive wings of energy. The next wave of architect ships attacked, but this time their weapons bent away. The Leviathan moved through them like a comet, its core blazing, its cannons pulsing with the strength of thousands of lives. The battle turned. The enemy fleet broke their hives, shattered in silent explosions that lit the dark side of Saturn like sunrise. But victory was not complete. From the edge of the system, a larger shadow emerged, something beyond measure, a shape so vast it covered the stars. The true architect, the one who commanded the swarm. Its surface rippled like black glass, and from its core radiated a light that burned cold. The Leviathan turned to face it, engines flaring brighter than any star. Aiden knew this was the final battle, the one their ancestors had died fighting. He whispered to his crew, "We are humanity. We are the memory and the promise of Earth." Lyra looked at him, tears in her eyes, and said, "Then let's show the universe what humans are made of." The Leviathan surged forward faster than light, its wings of energy cutting through space. The two giants met above the rings of Saturn. The stars blinked. The void screamed. The universe itself seemed to tremble as the last hope of humanity collided with the oldest fear ever born. The void was fire and silence. At once the clash of titans echoed through the black sea of space. The Leviathan burned gold and silver, its wings of light cutting across the darkness, while the great architect towered before it, a shadow that swallowed stars. Each movement of the creature bent space itself, the fabric of reality rippling, like a storm made of time. Commander Aiden Graves stood in the heart of the bridge, his body shaking under the pressure. Alarms screamed across the deck, but he heard nothing except the heartbeat of the ship, the pulse of something ancient and alive. Lyrikos clung to the console, her face glowing with the reflection of the light outside. She shouted that the architect's power was rising, that the Leviathan could not hold much longer. The Leviathan spoke again, its voice deep and calm. "I am the memory of humanity. I was never meant to destroy, only to remind. But now I remember all that was lost." Aiden whispered, "Then remember who you were." The Leviathan's core flared brighter, a sphere of white light blooming from its center, streams of data. And memories rushed through every system, faces, voices, laughter, tears, the echo of all humankind who had ever lived. The ship was not alone. It carried the essence of those who built it, every thought, every dream of the first civilization that had vanished before time began. Outside, the golden wings spread wider than planets. Every spark of light across the Leviathan's surface turned into a memory of life, cities, oceans, skies, laughter, the dreams of a billion souls shining like stars. The architect paused for a brief moment as if confused. Its tendrils froze its shape, trembling before that flood of living light. Lyra looked at Aiden with tears in her eyes. She said, "It is not a weapon. It is a remembrance. It is showing the universe what it means to be human." The architect roared without sound. Waves of darkness rippled outward, devouring light. Stars dimmed and died, but the Leviathan did not retreat. It moved forward through the dark wings, folding around the enemy like a cage of fire. Its voice filled the emptiness again. "We are the children of Earth. We fall, we rise, and we remember." The architect struck back, its energy flaring black. The impact shook the ship. The hull cracked, the bridge filled with smoke, but the Leviathan did not stop. Every system was burning. The AI gone silent, the crew screaming as gravity twisted. Aiden gripped the railing, shouting over the chaos, "Hold the line, hold it for Earth." Then everything stopped. A deep hum filled the air, a sound that felt older than creation itself. The Leviathan's light grew so bright it covered everything. The darkness melted away, and in that moment, every human aboard saw it, the truth. The Leviathan was not built only for war. It was built as a seed, a spark that would reignite the memory of humanity wherever it traveled. Its core was not a weapon, but a heart, and it had chosen this moment to awaken fully. The architect began to dissolve its massive form, breaking apart under the flood of memory, its shadow, folding into light until nothing remained but drifting fragments, glowing faintly like embers dying in water. The Leviathan floated motionless, its golden light fading slowly. The battle was over. Aiden stood weak, his hands trembling. He looked around. At his crew, many were silent, watching the last remains of the architect fade into starlight. Lyra whispered softly, "Is it over?" Aiden nodded, his voice faint. "Yes, but I think this was never about victory. It was about remembering who we are, the ships." Lights dimmed one by one, only the core still glowed faintly. A final pulse echoing through space. The Leviathan spoke one last time, its voice softer than a whisper. "Humanity is not small. Humanity remembers." Then the glow faded and the ship began to drift slowly toward the light of the sun. Years later, that light reached Earth. Scientists found a new star, glowing golden near Saturn. They called it the Memory Star. Its signal played a repeating pulse across the cosmos, a single message carved. In code, we remember. And somewhere far beyond the Milky Way, beyond the reach of any human eye, something in the dark paused and listened. The stars seemed to hold their breath again, for they knew humanity had spoken once more from the edge of eternity.